This meeting of Medicine Hat City Council of November 7th, 2022 is called to order at 6:30 p.m. Just want to make a note with respect to item 1, items discussed under the first bullet, it says retail product structures. It should say utility retail product structures. And we will have a moment for prayer or reflection. Thank you. I would like to read our land acknowledgement. The City of Medicine Hat acknowledges that we live and work on treaty territory. The city pays respect to all Indigenous peoples and honors their past, present, and future. We recognize and respect their cultural heritages and relationships to the land. At this time, I would also like to recognize that MP Glenn Mott is in the audience with us. We will now move to item 5, adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions? Seeing none, we will adopt the agenda. And item number 6, adoption of the minutes. 6.1, Medicine Hat City Council organizational meeting of October 17th, 2022. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted. Item 6.2, regular City of Medicine Hat Council meeting of October 17th, 2022. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted. Moving on to item 7, presentations. Today we have with us for Family Violence Prevention Month, the Medicine Hat Women's Shelter Society, and if you would both introduce yourselves, and they have been given 5 minutes for the presentation, so we will hold all our questions until the end of their presentation, at which time we can ask our questions. So welcome, Natasha and Peggy.
Thank you. Do you still want us to introduce ourselves? Sure. Yeah, Natasha Carvalho. I'm the Executive Director of the Medicine Hat Women's Shelter Society. And this is Peggy Ravel. She's our Community Education and Awareness Coordinator. Also clicker tonight. Thank you, Mayor Clark and Council, for having us here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge that I have 4 members of my board of directors here with me as well. It's really important for us to be here tonight just to raise awareness about family violence. As you know, this is Family Violence Prevention Month. As we signed the declaration with Mayor Clark on Tuesday and got the ball rolling and tied ribbons all around the city, and just really looking to raise some awareness and start conversations about how we as citizens of Medicine Hat can take action and be a part of the solution towards working towards ending family violence. So thank you. As you know, these are our programs and services that we offer, and I have told you about them before, so I'll just give you the quick nutshell version. Phoenix Safe House is our emergency shelter. It runs 24/7, and it's a 30-bed shelter. Musasa House is our second stage shelter. It's still the only second stage south of Calgary, so it's still a pretty busy shelter in terms of our catchment and how many people want to come down and use it. So we're pretty steady over there. We have 9 townhouse 2-story units and a barrier-free unit as well. We have a children's program. We offer child and youth services, so outreach groups and different things like that, as well as we have a daycare on site for the parents to use while they're in shelter, which is really helpful for going to appointments and things like that, or needing a little bit of respite. As well as our outreach services, which are currently located at the Ridge Professional Building. Part of that is the work we do with the police for our SFIT program. Safe Families Intervention Team is that acronym, and we've been running that now for almost 8 years. And just recently we started the Domestic Abuse Response Team with AHS, which is our hospital partnership with Medicine Hat Hospital, as well as we service the Orion area. Did I miss anything? Nope. Our biggest thing that we just launched, can you go back to that other slide? Sorry, my bad. We just launched November 1st is, we've always had a 24/7 helpline that has been used quite a bit. We do get quite a lot of calls on that, but just on November 1st, we launched 24/7 text and web chat line. So that was really important. We started in the summertime, and it actually came about during COVID when we realized there was a lot of people who were trapped at home, potentially with their abuser, and not able to make a phone call. So we were getting a lot of hurried calls from garages or cars or closets where people were trying to make some quick calls to us just to let us know that they were okay or just to check in and see what they needed to do. But what we realized is if you could text, you're not making a call. Or if you could get on the computer and do it web chat, that helps too if you have Wi-Fi. So we launched it in June and just did a soft launch, and it was really successful. And we heard from a lot of people, and Peggy's got some great comments about oh, you're going to jump to it. There you go. It's just been really positive, and I think a lot of people too. It's intimidating sometimes to pick up the phone and make that first call to reach out for help, and sometimes it's a lot easier to just text. As well as we're trying to catch a different demographic of people who do use that kind of services a little bit more readily. So, yeah. That's something we're pretty excited about. Our numbers remain pretty consistent from last year, not necessarily a huge increase, but still steady and still over 1,500 people, which still seems a lot to me for a city this size. Still, police received over 1,600 calls for domestic violence. So I think, to me, that's almost 5 calls a day. Like 5 calls a day is a lot of domestic violence in our city. So we just really want to make sure we're out there getting the message out that we're here and we're available and there are services, and to please don't stay in an unsafe situation. We saw that a lot during COVID. We were open and we said to people, please come in even if you have COVID. We'd rather you be safe and we'll figure it out. And so we were creative in how we isolated and did some things, and we still are. So yeah, it works out pretty well that way. Oh, look at me, I just launched right ahead. Peggy, I jumped right over all our stuff. So we're still seeing some challenges for the community. We still are struggling with finding affordable housing for our clients. A lot of our clients are staying in shelter longer because of the lack of housing for them to be able to find large families, just affordability, things they can afford on income support, things like that. Mental health and addictions is still a huge crisis for our families. We're seeing that in all our systems of care in Medicine Hat, that there's wait lists for that, or there's just a lot of complex needs. And so when people are presenting at shelter, it's not even about the family violence anymore. It's more about their mental health, and it's more about their addictions and how they're coping, which is understandable. COVID's taken a real toll on people, and it's just been really hard. So we're just really trying to work with community partners and be creative and as adaptive as we can to make sure that we're providing those supports. Sometimes we feel like we're more mental health and addictions support than we are family violence, but if that's what the families need at the time, then that's really what we're doing, and just trying to figure out the best way to do that. We continue to have great partnerships with the Root Cellar, community housing, child and family services, whoever we need to just build those connections, just to make sure families and kids are supported as much as we can. We still see that family violence rates continue to rise, and I think they will continue to rise, and I think we're going to see the domino effect of COVID for the next long time now, and just really realize that these families are pretty vulnerable in our community. We've got a lot of things planned for Family Violence Prevention Month. As you know, we did the declaration signing and the memorial walk. We tied ribbons all over. We're encouraging schools and other agencies to sort of adopt a block and tie up ribbons. So you'll probably see them all around towns, which I think is great because it just starts some conversations. And Peggy just did a seminar on debunking family violence myths, and I think that's really some of the stuff we just really need to make sure that people understand about. We've had a whole host of dignitary MLA people coming through with all these elections going on, so we've been talking up a storm and just letting people know really what it's about and who's facing family violence. And yes, our doors are open for male victims of family violence too, and yes, we see different types of violence, and we're just really working hard to make sure that whatever we can provide, we do. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the community. You'll see stuff at the public library, at the Viner Center. We're starting our Christmas hamper program. There's a lot of campaigns on radio and social media. Peggy, can you just talk to them about the webinars?
So this is the 3rd year we've done webinars. We know, especially because we cover such a wide range of area and schedules, it's hard to get people to connect with us to learn more. So we have had a few already, and we also are partnering with community partners as well for this. So we have Samus Immigration presenting, we have Canadian Mental Health presenting, and we have the FASD network presenting. So just a really wonderful, SafeLink presenting. So a really wonderful range of people talking about issues related in some way or another to family violence. So, and it's completely free. So free education, free connection to people and organizations. Yes, in our community.
Yeah. That's our quick 5 minutes, but I'll take questions if you have them.
Thank you. That was amazing, and you stuck to the time. That was incredible. I have a speakers list. I'll go first with my question. You mentioned lack of housing, mental health, and addictions. I'm just wondering if you had to, just from your experience over the last year, identify what the one or two biggest gaps in our social servicing network are, where the provincial government could help out, or what areas you're seeing as the gaps that need to be filled.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clark. I think affordable housing is an issue for us, for women who are single moms and have, a bunch of kids and are maybe just not on a very fixed income. There's not a lot of options out there. I just think the housing stock is not available. Secondly, a lot of our families are struggling with mental health and addictions, and there's huge wait lists at Alberta Mental Health and places like that. And so the ability to get in a timely manner is hard. We're struggling with even getting families at 5 North in the hospital. They're really maxed to capacity, and they're not able to keep people there a lot longer. And so people who are suicidal and people who are really struggling with a lot of profound mental health, sometimes they're not kept for as much as we would like them to be kept to get a proper assessment. And I think that's just because they have to move people through. They just don't seem to have the ability to do that. It's hard to get people into detox. You have to be clean for so many days before you can go, and that doesn't always work for our families. And so that's also a struggle as well.
Councillor McGrogan?
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for the presentation. Good as always. Really appreciate it. I noticed Calgary reported that their domestic violence numbers are down. Have you had any opportunity to talk to them to see if there's anything different happening there compared to our community?
I can't get a sense on really why they're saying that their numbers they are saying they're a bit down. Ours are a little bit, you can see that in some of our areas, but then up in other areas. So it feels like it just kind of all balanced out in different ways. I think that not as many people come into shelter, but we're definitely seeing a lot of numbers, people connecting through outreach capacities still. I think sometimes with the Calgary shelters, it's capacity issues in their shelters. They just don't have the ability to take people. I don't know if that skews their numbers or not like that, but we do have a meeting with our provincial network on Thursday, so I'm curious to ask them what's going on over there.
Councillor Canodal?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. So I have two questions. The first is for someone who's afraid to reach out or doesn't really know the steps because they've never taken them before. What steps occur when a person does reach out? And we'll just start with that. So what kind of steps?
We just did a webinar today on our intake process, so that's kind of funny timing. Thank you for that question. I think that's the biggest step I always say to people is walking through that front door or picking up the phone for the first time or actually admitting you need help. It's a huge burden. Some of that is why we actually opened our outreach offices not attached to the shelter a couple of years ago, so that if people didn't necessarily need shelter but still needed some support, they could just go there. And it's at the Ridge Professional Building, and you could be there seeing the orthodontist or getting your hip fixed or who knows. So it kind of took away some of that stigma around that. I think that's part of the struggle, and I think that's so much of why we're trying to encourage community to have conversations that are a little bit more open about it and try not to make it behind closed doors kind of thing like that. That's the biggest struggle. We know from the stats that 1 in 4 women experience family violence. And so we know that there's a lot of people out there who are just not admitting and not doing that. So we always encourage people, have a look at our website. There's safety planning on there. There's a lot of ways you can access that. Now you can access us right on the website and find out how to get help. And so that's some of why we did a lot of those things, just to sort of make it a little less intimidating for people to reach out for help. Peggy goes into the schools a lot and does a lot of presentations to the teen years, and I think that's been a really good sort of breaking down a little bit of the, how hard it is to reach out for help and being able to have some of those conversations at an earlier time. Did that answer that? Sorry.
I'm thinking, what does it look like
When
for
people
somebody
come
that
to the
shows up?
Yeah, so
or-
if somebody comes to the shelter, they would meet with an intake worker right away. We would bring them in. We have sort of like a intake area. We would just kind of talk to them, find out what's going on for them, make sure if they were at risk right away, if they needed to come into shelter right away. We would make sure we had bed capacity for it. Sometimes they have children, sometimes they're not ready to come. Maybe they have to go home, get the kids, pack a bag, come back. So we just kind of figure out what that looks like. We usually have capacity. We are very loath to turn people away. We are very creative in how we make our bed space work, because we recognize that you need to come in, you probably really need to come in. So people have their own bedroom. If a mom comes in with kids, we give them their own bedroom. We try never to ask a mom to share so that they have a little bit of privacy. It's a very warm, welcoming space. There's, you know, a lovely kitchen. We provide meals. You'd meet with a worker. Your children could come into the daycare. Your children could access a child support worker and, you know, just kind of have some conversations about what they've been experiencing as well. And so we just try to kind of leave it like that. Normally our stay is a 3-week stay, but we're very flexible around that as well in terms of what people need. And then we just try to support people while they're here and try to figure out, like, what are your next steps? Most people go back. That's the reality of it. You can't make a life-changing decision in 3 weeks. I don't even know what I did 3 weeks ago, let alone leave your whole life, right? So we recognize that, but we just want to make sure that people understand, like, come back. It's okay. We're just here. Come back. Call us, you know, maybe connect with outreach. What would that look like? Do some safety planning. So if you are going back to the abusive situation, we know that you're safe, or you have a bag packed, or you know where to go, or you know how to call, and, you know, things like that. Just that kind of.
That's
Thanks.
great. Just
Thank
quick
you.
follow-up. So what sort of experience or advice might you have for an immigrant family with more of a patriarchal perspective who might normalize this
Yeah.
abuse?
It's really hard because we see that a lot with the patriarchal cultures, and we see that a lot because that's just what they're used to. And so we are really struggling with trying to work with that. We do a lot of partnerships with Samus Immigration just to be able to have those conversations and to sort of make sure that people understand. We just had a group of Samus Immigration come by for a tour just so they could kind of see the facility, be able to explain it to people and make them understand. But it is a really hard barrier, and it is a hard thing if that's what you've grown up with and that's sort of what you know is normal and that's sort of how the culture is. But we do have a lot of women who come in from different cultures. We do have women who are brave enough to leave and come in. It's really hard. They're isolated from their families. They're, you know, it takes safety to a whole other level because it's not just the abuser, it's the family as well. And so, but we just work with them as much as we can to make sure that they can get the support that they need. But at least making that first phone call, at least knowing that there is somewhere they can go and they don't have to stay, is a big step. Thank you.
Councillor Hirsch?
Thanks, Your Worship. Tasha, again, every year, but I appreciate the presentation because it's all about awareness. So, and I caught you on the radio, so good job there as well. So, the question I had was relative to the amount of calls that you get, and you kind of stated that it was about 5 per day, et cetera, et cetera. The question I have is there any issues that you're finding that are fairly unique just for Medicine Hat? And, you know, we can always talk about money pressures, et cetera, but do you find that is there trends that you're finding that is unique to Medicine Hat that?
I don't know if it's unique to Medicine Hat, but I think that what's been catching my attention lately is that it's newer families that we've never seen before. People who normally were doing okay and were managing, but now cost of living has gone up and that's hitting people hard. People have lost jobs. You know, everything is like, if you talk to the root cellar, they'll tell you like there's such an influx in terms of need right over there, and that's the trickle down effect of that. So we're seeing new families who, I'm glad they're reaching out and I'm glad that they're coming in for support, absolutely. But and I'm not trying to imply we always see the same families, but you do see a lot of similar families, right? But the fact that there's newer families who are now struggling, who thought they were doing okay. But the flip side of that is I always think is at least they're calming earlier before things happen. That's part of the SFIT idea, right? Is that we get in early right away before it becomes a charge file and before it becomes bigger than it needs to be. Maybe it's the first time something ever happened and you just need some help. And the beauty of SFIT is that we can work with the perpetrator and the victim and like talk to them both, not together, but we can have those conversations and maybe figure things out. So that's some of what we're hoping is happening with those files.
I don't see any more questions, so I want to thank you both so much for coming and presenting to us, and also for the work that you do in and for our community. It is very much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you for the time. Peggy brought you stickers.
Yes. Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to item 8 of our agenda. And so this is the introduction of the 2023-2024 budgets. I want to make it clear that these are being introduced at this time, just introduced, and that's for the purpose of getting administration's proposed budgets to council and the community in plenty of time before we start doing our deliberations. Our deliberations will begin in an open council committee of the whole meeting on November 16th, and that will be in council chambers, and it will be open to the public. And so if we have questions and comments before then, we can email them to the administration so that we can make sure that they have answers for us on that day. But it is likely that deliberations will start but not end on that day. We anticipate that the budget will come back to the next open council meeting, the regular open council meeting. But again, this budget is administration's proposed budget, and we won't be doing deliberations today. So we have a few opening remarks. First, at item 8.1 is City Manager Glenn Feltham.
Thank you very much, Mayor Clark. Let me briefly introduce the proposed budgets for 2023 and 2024 before passing things over to Managing Director Egert for a more complete introduction. Through the budgetary process, we balance the needs, priorities, and aspirations of the city against revenue sources and fiscal sustainability. The proposed budget reflects reinvestments in operations and in the capital of the city. It reflects a desire by our community to maintain our current high levels of service. Our budgetary process is extensive. The process is informed by every department in the city. Departmental business plans are developed which set out operational and capital needs in alignment with Council's strategic plan. We further examine and make recommendations on municipal tax revenues and utility rates and fees. An important question, well, for any organization, particularly during a budgetary process, is, are we living within our means? That is, are we financially sustainable? A study by KPMG recently defined financial sustainability as financial sustainability is the ability to meet current and future expenses as they arise, and the capacity to respond to foreseeable changes and emerging risks. Sustainability for the city is not defined by a single revenue source or activity. In considering the sustainability of the City of Medicine Hat, it's useful to consider our activities in 4 categories: general municipal operations, utilities and distribution, energy generation, that's COMCO, and investments. General municipal operations are funded primarily through property tax revenues, utilities through rates, COMCO through the sale of energy, and investments from our savings, that is, from our reserves. While 3 of the 4 streams are relatively stable and sustainable, the level of historic earnings from COMCO is not. COMCO has 2 primary business lines, gas and electric production. Neither in the longer term may be sustainable. Gas production is diminishing annually. Simply stated, our gas fields are mostly played out. Earnings from electrical generation also have longer-term vulnerability. Almost all of our current electric generation is from gas. The federal policy is a net zero grid by 2035. Given these earnings will decline over time, an appropriate question is whether the city is financially sustainable without COMCO, that is, without those earnings. I believe the answer is yes. Our expected earnings on utilities and investments are sufficient to offset shortfalls in municipal services. And we have a strong and growing balance sheet that allows us to meet future challenges and fund our future. My answer 7 years ago or even 2 years ago would have been that we were not sustainable without Comco. So what's changed? We largely eliminated our losses from the production of oil and gas. That was costing us $30 to $50 million each year. Our expected investment income has increased markedly. This resulted from greater amounts under investment, from profits from Comco, and a change in investment policy. I stated that our expected earnings on utilities and investments are sufficient to offset shortfalls in municipal services. But we present a municipal operating cash shortfall of $11 million in 2023 and $6 million in 2024, similar to the $9 million shortfall budgeted from this year. Why? It occurs for two reasons. First, our existing reserve policies do not flow all the earnings from utilities and investments to municipal services. Rather, much of these earnings are transferred into reserves, with a transfer back from reserves to municipal operations. Second, in the short term, accounting earnings and our cash position may vary significantly. While sustainable, we must be prudent and vigilant. It is important that we continue to focus on our costs, both operating and capital. It's also important that we continue to focus on revenue generation. This includes both municipal taxes and utility rates. I would like to briefly discuss the importance of municipal taxes in our sustainability. Municipal taxes are the primary means to pay for ongoing municipal operations. They are central to sustainability. Where these rates are not raised to reflect increased costs, that is, to meet municipal inflation, the municipality may be at risk. This is particularly an issue if a lower rate is paid for through a non-sustainable revenue source. I would like to close by thanking everyone involved in the budgetary process. This includes many people from across the organization. Your efforts truly are greatly appreciated. At this time, I would like to turn things over to Dennis Egert for his introduction.
Are there any questions for Glenn at this time? Okay. Managing Director Egert.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. And good evening, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce the budget for the calendar years 2023 and 2024. As you can imagine, and as has already been spoken, the preparation of this budget is a significant undertaking for the entire organization, and it includes the efforts of many incredible employees to establish the following. The formation of business plans that include strategic objectives, action plans, and performance measures, and the preparation of detailed budgets that respond to and advances council priorities. As CFO, I would like to thank all those involved in preparing the budget, including the Budget Department, Vanessa Bonneville, Aaron Homer, and Joe Varsillo, and then support from the Strategic Management and Analysis Division, Jared Dickey and Travis Chucher. And I know there's many more that had a role to play. 4 years ago, in 2018, when we presented council with a multi-year budget for the years 2019 through 2022, since then, as you will hear in this presentation, a lot has happened since then. Through the continued financial prudence and commitment of council, administration, and our residents, we're well on our way to establish a firm foundation for the City of Medicine Hat. As part of this presentation and the introduction, I want to start with an introduction to provide some context as part of the 2023 and 24 budgets. I will then turn it over to my colleagues to present to council each of the following business units: municipal, tax-supported, and Invest Medicine Hat. That's Vanessa Bonneville. Commodity-based business. This is Travis Chucher, the manager for energy marketing and business analysis. And then thirdly, rate-supported utilities. This is Jared Dickey, Manager for Business Support. Each of these presentations will highlight two parts. One is the operating portion of the budget. That's the day-to-day expenses that provide facilities, amenities, programs, services on a day-to-day basis to our community. And the capital budget. And those are typically larger expenditures that have a life beyond 1 year and typically form part of our assets. So finally, as Mayor Clark had mentioned, this is only the first portion of our presentation to council. We will be reconvening on November the 16th with further budget deliberations with open council committee as a whole, and then again on November 21st at the next open council meeting. So as an introduction, the prime objective for today is to present a budget to council for their consideration and approval. And there's three things we want to try to achieve. Number one, that it reflects and advances the 4-year council priorities. Number two, it sets out the resources required to deliver the historic high level of services that our residents come to expect. I just want to talk a little bit about those services. On the municipal side, we have those services include emergency services, police and fire services, 911, lifeguards, transit drivers, park maintenance, snow clearing, pothole repair, our library, recreational staff, and I could go on and on. On the utility services, we are including safe, reliable, and cost-effective services related to water, sewer, solid waste, and the distribution of our electricity and gas. The third component is to achieve a fair balance, and I call it the right balance for the City of Medicine Hat. We strongly believe that this budget strikes that reasonable balance between financial sustainability and organizational health, which both need to be kept in check. This budget is our recommendation on the best use of taxpayers' dollars and ratepayer dollars. One of the themes included in the council strategy is building a healthy and sustainable future. So what does this mean? What are we able to do if we've achieved a healthy and sustainable community? Well, it allows us to do a few things. Responding to the needs, priorities of our community. It allows us to take risks while remaining effective stewards of the assets that have been entrusted to us. It also cultivates a trusting environment within our organization and relationships we have into the community. And it empowers us to develop talent that allows them to be innovative. The budget objectives are laid out in four points. One is the objective of this budget is to reflect and advance the council priorities, preserve those and maintain those high-quality municipal and utility services that our residents value, provide a competitive property tax rate and a utility rate as we compare ourselves to other municipalities in the province, and to balance financial sustainability while maintaining organizational health. As a reminder to council and those watching this presentation, I want to provide some context as to our planning process. You may recall back in 2018, we had presented a 4-year budget, and that was 4 individual years all at the same time, covering the years 2019 to 22. Our key assumptions and management estimates at the time provided to be short-lived for various reasons, including the pandemic, and we required annual adjustments to reflect reality. We are now moving towards a 2-year multi-year budget, and council will be asked to approve the upcoming 2 years in 2023 and 2024. And then this council, again in 2 years' time, will be asked to consider and approve the budgets for 2025 and 2026. We have a changing environment. We're living in the changing environment. We see change every day. Significant changes have occurred since 2018, the last time we presented a multi-year budget to council. First and most importantly, we have a new council strategic plan. That plan outlines priorities for the upcoming 4 years, and this budget, the desire of this budget is to reflect and advance these priorities. Secondly, the organizational impact and our response to the pandemic, both internally to our organization, but also, and probably just as importantly, out to the community in terms of how we responded and maintained services. We are moving to a new normal, but it's a different normal. And that's both for our employees and for the community and our residents and our customers. One of the things that did occur over the last few years is we held property tax revenue at 0% for 2 successive years. And many municipalities in Alberta were considering that, and some actually did that as well. That was for 21 and 22. When you look at the cumulative effect of that period of time on that decision, it's a cumulative revenue impact of $7.5 million for our organization. This was required at the time. It was done for the right reasons at the time, but there is now pressure that we need to catch up on that on that action. Another change is the volatility of commodity prices, and largely around the gas and electric landscape. And when we look at the electricity, we see the industry really trying to sort out what the world of decarbonization will look like. A delayed new electric supply is certainly putting pressure on the market. That's largely driven by supply and demand. And then also alternatives we see alternatives coming on stream, but we're still years away from having alternatives provide a stable solution to the industry. The government of Alberta is also looking to balance its budget and is also dealing with commodity fluctuations. One of the things that have been announced already is we will see a reduction of transfers to municipalities, including City of Medicine Hat. And although the formula hasn't been approved yet in terms of the exact impact to City of Medicine Hat, we're expecting overall up to a 25% reduction in those grants that we need to rehabilitate and replace our underlying assets. And we have about $3 billion worth of assets at the City of Medicine Hat. Lastly, and most recently, we have significant municipal inflation, and the Bank of Canada is responding with interest rate increases. So we're seeing things, and I'll use some examples here. Vehicle prices, as we're looking to replace our vehicles, some of those vehicles are up as much as 20%. And not only the price is up, but the availability, there's a shortage of supply in a lot of areas, so there's a long lead time. Fuel prices have gone up, our insurance rates have gone up for various reasons based on what's happening with the industry. So there's some examples on how we're facing inflation, and the inflation is included in our assumptions that I'll get to in a second. This is an interesting pictorial of a trend. And when I said we have since 2018, I want to highlight 2 things. One is if you look at the line graph, we've reduced our negative cash flows out of our oil and gas business through the accelerated abandonment of oil and gas wells. And we're currently in process of doing that. In 2018, we had approximately 4,500 gas wells across Alberta and Saskatchewan. And now we have 800 productive wells. So the difference between the two are in various stages of abandonment and reclamation, and often that takes 5 to 7 years to complete that process. Secondly, investing the surplus earnings from our commodity-based business and also earning investment interest on our reserves. And you can see the bar graph there starting in 2018, showing our reserve balance of $416 million, and 2022, our forecast for the end of the year. That should state 640, so if there's a correction to be made in the minutes, it should be $640 million. So both of these establish a great foundation for the City of Medicine Hat, and the financial prudence will continue as we journey to the next two-year budget and beyond that as well. In terms of treasury management, I do want to highlight two things. One is our management of our debt, and that's an important policy in terms of how much debt and how much leverage that we're prepared to do as an organization. Our debt policy is really defined by two things. One is legislation by the province that has a firm debt limit, and then the City of Medicine Hat actually took a more conservative approach and designated 70% of that limit. So our debt limit for 2024 is projected to be approximately 59%. Again, our internal policy is 70%. So I feel quite comfortable and well within policy as it relates to debt. In terms of cash and investments, we do have a investment policy that has been approved by council, and all investments are within policy and within regulation as defined by the Alberta government. Often we're asked, what are those policies that council has approved, and what are the levers that council has in changing or updating its policies? I've listed some of the more important policies as it relates to this budget. Of course, our debt policy and debt management policy, we have user fees and subsidy levels. I mentioned our investment policy, financial reserves, and our distributable funds dividend policy. These are all policies that have been put into place, and we are adhering to them in terms of the principles as well as the procedures that have been approved. On the right-hand side, these are not necessarily policies, but in terms of principles that we're following. Those are service levels that we're providing to the community, not only the level of service, but the type of services that we're providing. And secondly, utility pricing, utility pricing in terms of how that is to be valued. And currently, we're following a market price on utilities. This is my last slide, and I just want to remind council on the budget assumptions that was presented to council back in July of 2022. And these have slightly been updated, but these are the budget assumptions that we've included in the budget that council will see. I'll start with revenue, property tax revenue of 4%. So just a little bit on that 4%. A property tax increase of 4% on a median home in Medicine Hat. A median home is valued at about $289,000. That will translate to an average of approximately $107 a year. Now, every home will experience something slightly differently depending on what the assessments look like at the beginning of 2023, but that'll give council a broad idea of what that 4% impact will be. Further, we're expecting, in addition to that, new assessment growth. This is new construction that would be assessable and taxable, leading to a further 1% of property tax revenue. User fees and charges, 4%. Municipal consent and access fee, that's a $3 million increase over 2 years through 2024. On the expense side, we're seeing general municipal inflation of goods and services at 4%. And to give you an example and an illustration of that, if we had a budget of materials for $1 million in 2022, we would expect approximately a $40,000 increase in 1 year, applying a 4% increase. Salary and wages, 2.5%. And then on the treasury, an average real return, that's after inflation, of 3%. And an average cost of borrowing, it's approximately 3.6, 3.7%. But a little bit of comment on the cost of borrowing. Our borrowing goes back, depending on the life of the asset, but we could have borrowing going back 20, 25 years. So that average rate, 3.6%, when you consider the period of time, is actually a very good rate, a good average rate. So what I'd like to do is call my colleague, Vanessa Bonneville, our city controller, just to take us through the municipal tax-supported budget.
Before Ms. Bonneville, Controller Bonneville, comes to the podium, does anyone have any questions for Managing Director Egert? Okay, I have one question, but I don't need the answer right now. It's for a future, but you mentioned that provincial contributions to municipalities are down and mentioned the local government financial framework. I think there are quite a number of other areas where the government of Alberta has decided to reduce funding or increase their share. So we've got fines have been, the provincial government has increased its portion of our fines to 40%. Grants in place of taxes, so that's the provincial government's taxes that they should be paying on property they own in the city that they are not going to pay. So it would be good to get a sense of how much revenue we are actually losing from those withdrawal of programs and funds.
And Mayor Clark, those are two great examples. I can add that they've also changed how they price the interest rate for any funds that they lend out to each of the municipalities. So we can come together with a list of that and share it with council on November 16th.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Controller Bonneville, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Clark, City Council, City Manager Feldham, Managing Directors, and members of the gallery. Where do I click? There we go. Tonight I'm here to present the Municipal Tax-Supported and Invest Medicine Hat 2023 and 2024 major operating and tangible capital assets budgets, including conclusion and recommendation to support the proposed budgets. Reiterating that this portion of the relates to municipal operations and Invest Medicine Hat, this is a proportionate distribution of where tax dollars go in terms of funding the programs and services throughout the municipality. Reiterating and repeating Managing Director Egert, that includes transit, Echo Dale, Family or Big Marble Go Center. It also includes facilities and fleet, so maintenance of those and procurement of those services. Also includes emergency services, police, fire, and 911, as well as the services that are corporately supporting the other departments internally. So human resources, information technology, accounting, corporate communications, as well as strategy and analysis, business case analysis, all of those types of things. Also included in the municipal budget is a proportion of funding that flows over to Invest Medicine Hat for economic development, which is the 1% little sliver we see in the pie here. Municipal operations, the key impacts of applying the budget assumptions and the translation to the municipal budget. Again, property tax revenue increase reflects the cost of service delivery, as well as a $7.5 million revenue shortfall resulting from 0% property tax increases in 2021 and 2022. At the time it was known that a 0% tax increase would impact future revenues, it was a strategic and intentional decision to support the overall community through the uncertainty of the COVID pandemic. Capital plan includes budget and funding related to maintenance and upgrades deferred during COVID-19 pandemic. It is roughly a return to normal capital funding cap that we have for the municipality that really balances needs, wants, ensures that anything deferred through COVID-19 is done and continues to maintain our existing programs and services throughout the municipality. Permanent positions were added to the municipal operating budget in key priority areas to support the high level of service delivery in the municipality. This budget also assumes contributions to the Heritage Savings Fund to achieve endowment income that is expected to come into the operating budget in 2025, proposing $50 million that was approved and contributed in 2022, as well as an additional contribution of $25 million by January 1st of 2023. Further explaining how the endowment would be or could be used to balance the municipal operating budget, we do anticipate a cash shortfall of $11 million in 2023 and $6 million in 2024 that will be funded through reserves. Again, anticipating that the endowment of the Heritage Reserve will come into income in 2025 and 2026. Noting that should investment returns exceed our assumptions, that would present the opportunity as we go through the budget cycle for those years to examine those underlying assumptions, including service delivery throughout the municipality. This table represents the application of management assumptions and estimates, including property tax and assessment growth, salaries and wages, general municipal inflation, and the previously mentioned positions added to key priority areas. The majority of the change in budget between 2022 and 2023 is due to those assumptions. Minor adjustments where costs and/or revenues are expected to change at a rate different than municipal inflation are also included in the budget. In the municipal cash requirements, that also includes the flow through of funding to Invest Medicine Hat for economic development, where the land department of Invest Medicine Hat is represented on its own line. The proposed Invest Medicine Hat budget is a placeholder based on the current state trajectory, but with a full expectation of being revisited with council once the resourcing plan and related strategies are confirmed, which is in progress with executive and council. The capital and major operating expense budget for the municipality, $45 million in 2023 and $49.1 million in 2024. Again, this represents a return to normal capital spending, incorporates maintenance deferred through COVID-19, and balances the needs and wants of the municipality while maintaining reserves sufficient to ensure that there is flexibility to respond to risks and opportunities that may arise over the next two-year budget period. Aligning the capital budget with council strategic priorities, again, we do see the majority of the budget in resilience and sustainability, which speaks to the catch-up of any maintenance deferred, as well through COVID-19, as well as maintaining existing programs and services as they are right now at their current levels. The budget also includes funding for community housing, infrastructure renewal, off-leash, dog park development, work at Echo Dale Regional Park to continue keeping that gorgeous park up to where it is and able to support the community. Community partnership program, there continues to be funding for that, so that is where local community groups may apply for funding through other levels of government grants where they may require a matching portion of that, and there is funding available for council to provide that matching funding if they so choose. Parks accessibility, culture, entertainment facility, equipment renewals, again, maintaining existing service levels. Through innovation, business process optimization, this is both for external facing departments to continue and provide efficient and effective service delivery to our customers, as well as internal departments are looking at optimizing their processes so they can better provide services to our operating departments and thus provide efficient and effective services to the residents. Funding for technology to support internal collaboration and, again, customer-facing digitization, and funding for town square washrooms to increase event hosting opportunities. Recommendation to council for this budget is to adopt the 2023 and 2024 municipal tax supported and Invest Medicine Hat major operating and tangible capital assets, as well as related funding sources. In addition, in accordance with the distributable funds and dividend policy, approve the transfer of the 2022 projected free cash flow, $25 million to the Heritage Reserve Plan, as previously mentioned, to produce an endowment into municipal operations in 2025, with the remainder amount contributed to restricted reserves as per policy. So questions?
Seeing none at this time, We will move on to 8.3, thank you. 8.3, the 2023 and 2024 Energy and Infrastructure Division, Commodity Business Operating and Capital Budget. And we have Travis Tukshire, Manager, Energy Marketing and Business Analysis for this presentation.
Good evening. Tonight I'll present the Commodity-Based Business Unit 2023-2024 Operating and Tangible Capital Asset Budget. I think you might have a few of the items that we'll go over tonight. We'll look at a macro view of the commodity markets and Comco's strategy in these markets. We'll take a look at 2022 in review, what prices did and how we performed. We'll take a look at the 2023 and 2024 outlook and present the operations and capital budget updates. So this slide looks awful familiar from last year. It's because these themes are still holding in the market today. Those three themes being significant volatility, supply response, and substitution response issues. Most of this is due to the decarbonization in the market, and that is driving that volatility. It's driving the delayed response of supply and also the time lag for substitution response to come on. So Comco strategy, in 2022, we added Unit 17, and we look to optimize those generation assets in the future. We're also in the process of developing and implementing an energy transition strategy. There's also a few long-term strategic projects on the go, those including carbon capture, utilization and storage, as well as hydrogen. And we'll continue to execute on our abandonment and reclamation program. So from this slide, just two things to really mention. We do anticipate a positive EBITDA for the 2023 and 2024 for Comco. We see steady volumes from the natural gas and electric retail. However, we do see a decline in natural gas production volumes just from depositions and natural decline of these fields. Some key inputs, obviously the biggest input is always pricing. Pricing then flows through to our volume projections and our revenues. We've also updated our operations and maintenance expenses, as well as our tangible capital asset budget. So if we look back at 2022 in review, obviously this is the highest power price we'll have seen since the market deregulated. I think currently we're sitting at an average of $144 a megawatt hour. There's also been significant volatility. 32% of the hours have been over $100. On the gas side, we've also seen volatility and higher prices. Two contributing factors would be the increase in natural gas demand from power generation, as well as the increased LNG export capability, which has made natural gas more of a global market than it has been in the past. On the natural gas prices, we've seen a high of $8.30 a GJ and a low of negative 80 cents a GJ. Strong oil prices have also been seen in 2022, largely a result of the Ukraine conflict. So outlook for 23 and 2024, we do see the power market staying fairly strong in 2023 and potentially tapering off slightly into 2024. One of the big things to have a look for is the asset supply coming online. There's a large combined cycle that is expected to come on in Q1 of 2023. However, there may be additional asset retirements in this period as well. On the natural gas side, we do see this staying strong, and the fact that LNG will increase and natural gas power burn to stay steady will keep this price steady and strong. So if we look at our commodity prices, I'll just confirm that the column on the left is what was budgeted in 2022 and wasn't actuals in 2022, but you will see our price in 2023 is higher. The power side being around the $93 range, $94 range. Gas being at the $5.20 a GJ is our projected price. However, they will, as I mentioned previously, we do see them falling off into 2024, gas coming down into the $4.50 range and power coming into the $75 range. That's the longer term. The bottom three graphs will show you the longer term outlook of those three markets. So operations budget, we see obviously a very strong EBITDA of $75 million in 2023. Lots of this is mainly due to commodity prices. I do want to reiterate that commodity prices are very volatile and that we don't anticipate that these strong earnings will remain out into the future or over the longer term. And our capital budget, there's no growth capital planned over the next 2 years. We do have sustaining capital. Most of it is mainly due to our electric generation assets, but there is some on the oil and gas production side, as well as there is some abandonment and reclamation additional funding asking for approval for 2023. And obviously, lastly, to finish off the recommendation is for City Council to approve the 2023-2024 commodity-based business tangible capital asset and operating budgets. Any questions?
Seeing no questions at this time, we will, thank you very much. We will move on to the 2023-2024 city operations, rate-supported operating and capital budget, and we have Jarrett Dickey, Manager, Municipal Services, Business Support. And this item is also linked with items 8, the 2 bylaws that deal with the rates. That will be business arising. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I'm Jarrett Dickey, Manager, Municipal Business Support. I'm here to present the utility rate-supported budget for 2023-2024. I think that's the wrong presentation. Okay,
Do you want to give it anyway?
just wing it.
Yeah, no, I'm just joshing. So I'll just correct myself here. So this is a combined presentation of the city operations rate-supported operating and capital budget and the environmental utilities operating and capital budget. So we'll be going through both of those things, and then will be first reading of bylaws arising out of these 2 items.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, and
thank
there
you.
should be 5 bylaws associated with that. Okay. So, good evening. I'll start all over. But yeah, I'm here to present the rate-supported budgets for environmental utilities, which is a combination of city assets as well as Medicine Hat Power and Water, as well as utility distribution systems, gas and electric distribution, which is part of city operations. So I'll do a highlight of the agenda. I'll go over what utilities are rate supported and what that means. I'll try to do a rate utilities 101, and hopefully if you have questions, I'll be able to answer them. I'll walk through a comparison of average utility bills compared to other municipalities for 2022, what rate changes we're proposing for 2023 and 2024, walk through the rate supported budget for 2023 and 2024, both operating and capital, what our budget recommendation is, and the bylaw recommendations as well. As I mentioned, so the rate supported areas include city operations, are fully funded by utility rates. They are not supported through municipal property taxes. So environmental utilities represents the water, sewer, and solid waste utilities, which is within city assets as well as Medicine Hat Power and Water departments. And the city operations department represents electric and gas distribution. So what do utility rates fund? This is probably the most common question we get because there's lots of line items on the utility bill. We did spend a significant amount of time earlier this year refining those explanations on the website for customers. But essentially what they do pay for is the operating expenses for the utility. So the building, maintenance, administration, and operating and replacement of infrastructure related to those services. What it does not include is the electric and natural gas commodity. That is a separate line item on the bill that is not part of this funding for these groups. The revenues that we're proposing ensure sustainable funding for the utilities into the future. And so that includes safe, reliable delivery of these essential services to our customers. So when we experienced that significant wind event this year, we have staff, we actually called in additional staff to come and respond so that people could be restored with power. Same with other utilities, gas, water, sewer, and solid waste. The rates recovered from the operating costs and the utilities, as well as we're able to make a regulated rate of return on their capital investment, which we follow AUC guidelines on. And as well as with any part of the city, we continue to focus on cost containment. So that's one of the main drivers to make sure that we're minimizing cost to the customers at the end of the day. So what are some significant drivers of rate increases? Obviously, as mentioned previously in other presentations, inflation on goods and services, materials and supplies. This includes labor costs as well as external contracted services as well as materials and supplies, particularly chemicals in our treatment facilities that are used to treat the water and wastewater that we're obligated to treat. Regulatory changes, and as we get into the rates, I'll explain, you'll see a bigger bump in water than what you'll see in the other utilities, but that's primarily driven by a regulatory change that we're required to meet. Aging infrastructure replacements, so that's sustaining capital that needs to be reinvested so that there is pipes in the ground and lines to deliver that service that is expected to the community. As well as capital investment to ensure we have climate resilient infrastructure. So the berms that we built as a result of the 2013 flood, we relocated several lift stations to make them more resistant to future events. And then obviously changes in customer consumption levels. So with COVID and the economic recovery that's occurring, making sure that we're monitoring those trends and adjusting accordingly. And the city calculates these rates based on a regulated rate design. So we have a model that we've built that we have vetted through third party, and it's designed to achieve a revenue to cost ratio equal to 1 to make sure that our utilities are sustainable now and into the future. So this chart shows Medicine Hat's 2022 residential utility rates and how they compare to other comparable municipalities. As I mentioned earlier, this does not represent the gas or electric commodity. This is just the delivery of those utilities, but it does include water, sewer, solid waste, gas, and electricity. So the green bar represents those costs. The blue bar represents the municipal consent and access fee, and the yellow bar represents the federal carbon levy, which everybody pays. This slide highlights the changes, the step changes from our 2022 current rates approved to our 2023 and 2024 proposed rates. Again, the green bar represents the utilities excluding natural gas and electricity. The blue bar represents the municipal consent and access fee, and the yellow bar represents the federal carbon levy. The federal carbon levy is increased April 1st of each year, which is a little bit off cycle from our budget increases, but it is increased year over year. So this table is a more detailed breakdown of the utility costs by each of the respective areas. As you can see, overall, the subtotal, and again, this excludes natural gas and electric commodity, is a 2.8% increase in 2023 and a 3.5% increase in 2024. The total, including the municipal consent and access fee, would be a 5% and a 4.5% increase. I will address the water increase of 6% just because it's a little bit higher than the average, and that is really driven by the residuals handling facility that's being built just south of the Trans-Canada Bridge. You'll see construction starting probably in the spring of next year, and that is a regulatory requirement that we need to build. We've been fortunate to be have an extension on that requirement, and we were very fortunate to receive grant funding for the majority of that capital work that is happening there. But it is a new service that's being added, a new service level, and hence there's a cost associated with that. So the rates focus on long-term financial sustainability and investment in risk-based infrastructure management. As I mentioned, this ensures that we have ongoing effectiveness in providing essential services to our customers at competitive rates while meeting or exceeding industry standards. following table highlights the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. These funds are primarily used to pay for principal and interest payments for those utilities, as well as investment in sustaining capital for each of those utilities. The capital budget focuses again on sustaining the investment in those services. So planned expenditures are 55.6 million in 2023 and 16.2 million in 2024. The focus on the capital outlay within environmental utilities areas is primarily around aging infrastructure. So $9.8 million for water is to maintain the treatment and distribution assets to our customers. $15.7 million for sewer, again, to maintain the treatment and collection of sewer, and $200,000 to maintain solid waste services to our customer service base. The primary capital outlay in electric and gas distribution, again, is to support aging infrastructure. However, there is some strategic investments occurring within the electric distribution area. So $13.4 million is related to distribution utility and reinvestment and sustaining capital. $24 million is related to new substation MH11, which is really focused on adding additional capacity to the south part of the city and provide for future expansion in the surrounding area. $2.2 million, again, growth capital for upgrades to the transmission line to accommodate customer load growth with greater demands on electricity expected in the next 5 to 10 years as electrification becomes more prominent. And $6.5 million for gas distribution is related to the reinvestment and sustaining capital for that utility. So our budget recommendation is for council to approve the 2023-2024 environmental utilities operating and capital budget, as well as the electric and gas distribution rate supported operating and capital budget, and then the associated bylaws. So there's 5 bylaws as well.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, so if you, I guess we can do business arising now.
I'd like to make some motions. Do you want me to run through all of 8.4 and 8.5? Or do you want me to wait?
Well, I think that Mr. Tuksher has another, Mr. Dickey has another presentation associated with E&I, or did you do both your presentations?
It was combined.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I was paying attention. Okay, yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4726, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the gas utility bylaw.
Second.
All right, being first reading, there will be no debate, so we will vote. And that's unanimous. Just a reminder that with our rate bylaws, we do have a non-statutory public hearing that is required by our bylaw. So that hearing will be occurring prior to second and third reading on the council meeting on November 21st.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4727, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the electric utility bylaw.
Second.
Being first reading, we will have no debate and we will vote. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd like to add in a motion that is not listed on the agenda. I'd like to make a motion that council direct administration to prepare utility relief options for those most disadvantaged and bring it to our next regular council meeting.
Second.
Are there any questions or debate on the motion on the table? Okay, seeing none, we will vote on the motion. And the motion is passed unanimously.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next one. I'd like to motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4715, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend bylaw 1541, commonly referred to as the sewer bylaw.
Second.
Okay, we will vote on first reading. And that's unanimous.
Thank you. I would like to motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4717, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the water service bylaw.
Second.
Okay, we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Sorry, I lost track there for a moment. I'd like to motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4722, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the gas utility bylaw. Oh, sorry. City Clerk, did I go on too far?
No. Well, we have bylaw 4717.
Thank you, through the mayor. We still need a motion for bylaw 4715 and 4716.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I had jumped over those. I thought I had done those.
I think the number 3 of 8.5 is 4717. Did you do 4717?
Yes.
We've only done 2 under that bylaw.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Did we not do bylaw 4726
No, we did.
and 4727?
Yes.
And
And then my
Councillor
additional
Van Dyke,
motion.
you went to the additional motion?
Yes.
And then we went to 4717?
15.
We have not done 4715.
We did the sewer bylaw, yes. Oh. I know that we did the sewer bylaw. So is it the waste 4716? Okay, my apologies, everyone.
No worries.
Okay, I motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4716, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the waste bylaw.
Second.
All right, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Thank you. So now we're gonna, item 8.6 is draft 2023 and 2024 business plans. We will receive more information on these items at our Council Committee of the Whole meeting on November 16th. At this point, they're just in our agenda for information. And now we will move on to.
Thank you, through the chair. I believe we still have to do bylaw 4722 and 4723. Okay.
Item 8.7 is retail product structures. And Managing Director Pankos, do you want to give a presentation or an introduction?
Yes, thank you, through your worship to council. These two proposed bylaw amendments have been developed with the assumption of continuing the principle that Comco behaves as a business and Inaman and Comco being our energy businesses, behaves as a business and in a manner consistent with our industry peers. Comco Business, therefore, determines energy product design and related pricing based on the current and forward energy market. With that principle in mind, staff have conducted a review of our provincial energy competitors, and as a result, the proposed bylaw amendments introduce additional product choice for customers. It provides a greater consistency of product options between the energy types and customer categories, and it also proposes to redesign the fixed rate contract product to better match the customer choice and pricing timing. In other words, it provides a mechanism to determine the relevant market-based pricing to match the period of time for when the customer chooses to lock in a price. I will also note that in addition to the package materials, a presentation is planned at an upcoming council meeting as an introduction prior to the anticipated non-statutory hearing for these two proposed bylaws. With that, I will turn it back to your worship. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion, if I may. I would like to motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4722, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the gas utility bylaw.
Second.
And we will vote. And that's unanimous.
Oh, sorry. I would like to make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4723, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the electric utility bylaw.
Second.
We will vote. And that's unanimous. I just want to clarify with, let's say, Acting Managing Director Mock. I stated that there was a non-statutory public hearing for the sewer, the environmental utility rate bylaws as well. Is that correct?
So to be honest, I believe that is true, yes, at the same time as the gas and electric rate updates having to do with the budget moving forward.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now we are moving on to item 9, commission business arising. Item 9.1 is the Emergency Advisory Committee, and that meeting took place on October 18th, 2022.
I move that council adopt the minutes of the Emergency Advisory Committee meeting held on October 18th, 2022, as presented in the package for the corporate record.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. I am the chair of that committee, and I do not have any highlights at this time. Item 9.2, Energy and Infrastructure Committee. 9.2.1, meeting minutes of October 20th, 2022.
I would like to motion that council adopt the minutes of the Energy and Infrastructure Committee meeting held on October 20th, 2022 as presented for the corporate record.
Second.
Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Are there any errors or omissions on the minutes?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I had comments to make on the meeting. Sorry.
Okay, so let's vote on the minutes, and then we'll do council or meeting highlights. And that's unanimous. Councillor Van Dyke, as Chair of the Energy and Infrastructure Committee, do you have any highlights?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do. I have a few comments. So I would just like to remind the public of the change to Dunmore, Spencer, and Kingsway intersection happening this Wednesday, November 9th. Like many of you, I've been frustrated in the past waiting to turn right at the bottom of the Dunmore Road hill while one or more vehicles ahead of me wait at the red to go straight through the intersection. It actually happened to me this week. We all know that small things can make or break your day, and likewise, many small things can make or break a community. And hopefully this change will be a benefit and help people in their day-to-day lives. Just a few reminders, the intersection changes will not include changes to the existing signal timing or traffic signal lights, such as added dedicated right-hand turn arrows. Please remember to obey all rules of the road. You still need to come to a complete stop on the red before turning right. The interim change is intended to remain until more permanent intersection designs are implemented during planned upgrades to the Kingsway corridor, which is anticipated in the next 5 years. And city staff will be monitoring the performance of the intersection and making adjustments if needed. And most of all, I would just ask the public to please be patient and extend grace to other motorists as people become familiar with the changes. If you've driven in Medicine Hat for a long time, there is a tendency to do things out of habit, and this might be a hard habit for some people to break. So if people are making last-minute lane changes or have slowed down out of confusion, please try to be understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now to item 9.3, Public Services Committee, 9.3.1, meeting minutes of October 24th, 2022.
I move the council adopt the minutes of Public Services Committee meeting held on October 24th, 2022, as presented in the package for the corporate record.
Second. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Item 9.3.2 is business arising regarding the Truth and Reconciliation.
Yes, I make a motion again that council approve the Truth and Reconciliation actions for 2023 as listed in the agenda.
We need a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Hirsch?
Well, Your Worship, I appreciate the efforts that's been done by committee on this important issue for sure. I'm just wondering with regards to the bullet in regards to the recruitment and onboarding of a community inclusion coordinator to support training, et cetera. So as much as I appreciate the effort that was going in, I'd like to understand if we have a scope, a framework from which this position is being formed to determine whether or not full-time, part-time, contract might be more prudent in this regard. I'm just a little bit worried when you start planting FTEs without having a full understanding whether or not the role and responsibilities are proven out yet. That's my only concern. So I don't know if there's an ability maybe for committee to understand or take it back in terms of what I'm kind of looking for from a scope perspective. I just can't necessarily in good graces actually look to approve this at this point in time the way it's crafted. So I just need some guidance in terms of what we could do in this regard.
Managing Director Mastel, why don't Councillor Robbins, you take a first crack, and then if you need to throw it over to Managing Director Mastel, you are
I will
welcome
happily,
to.
thank you very much. And through the chair, I will happily send it Managing Director Mastel's way in just a moment. But I will tell you, Councillor Hirsch, that we spent over an hour discussing all of the recommendations, including, as Councillor Knodel asked the same question that you did, and Managing Director Mastel had a most excellent answer. So I will let him give it to you.
Through your worship, Councillor Hirsch, that was 9 in the morning, and this is 8 at night, so my response isn't going to be maybe as crisp as it was at 9 in the morning. But the framework in terms of what the resource addition would be tasked with doing, we tried to articulate that in the recommendations that are captured here. So these specific recommendations outline the objectives to be actioned in 2023. I think they seem succinct in bullet form. There is a tremendous amount of work when you think about putting together policy to drive a diversity, equity, and inclusion approach across a corporation of 1,400 people. We have an Indigenous community that we have started work with as we develop the response to the calls to action that is looking for ongoing formalization of an advisory board, but stakeholder consultation work is a big part of that. We've seen a number of councillors have been part of the process of the work with the committee that led us to this point, and have some appreciation for the amount of dialogue that comes along with that, as well as the work to form and refine recommendations as it relates to the City of Medicine as a corporation, what it means with our institutional partners, and what it means for our community, that I think is a pretty significant task and a shift in terms of what our corporation has been doing in this regard in the past. I suggested to committee, I'm concerned that we've got more of a job that we're asking here than one individual. I've seen the amount of work that has gone on thus far to get us to this point, and the people that have contributed to it thus far, and the expectations that I'm hearing from this council in terms of advancing this work and the consultation that's required to do it appropriately is pretty significant. I personally am involved in the file with respect to the repatriation of Indigenous remains and the work with the University of Alberta. That in itself is quite significant, and will have a lot of consultation work involved to actually complete it. It's a long time coming, but we are hopefully in 2023 going to see the successful conclusion of that file, and those remains returned back to the City of Medicine Hat and interned appropriately within Hillside Cemetery. That's just one piece of 2023's work, and I expect there'll be a number of recommendations that are formulated in 2023 to carry on into 2024 and beyond, that will be leaning on the continuity from an individual to carry that forward. So we talked about contract type positions or interim roles and things of that nature at Public Services Committee, and felt that we're moving along a journey here, a pretty significant journey, and it'll benefit by establishing the continuity of a person to carry that forward for the corporation. I will point out that the other institutions in the City of Medicine Hat, the college, the Medicine Hat School District, and the separate school district all have resource support in this area, and have had for the last couple of years for the college. Last year for Medicine Hat School District, and more recently with the separate school district. So just in terms of other institutions that are working in this area in our community and how they've resourced it.
So I appreciate the commentary, and I hear some of the activities would be considered one-off events. All I'm proposing before this council, in front of us, we've got a multitude of amounts of FTEs coming back to the City of Medicine Hat, and before we just declare it on an omnibus or do it all collectively, I slash the taxpayer needs to understand just the value for money. And I guess at the end of the day, is there an ability, and maybe you'd ask the committee, for us to do a term position to evaluate and look at the work early on that gets done, and then quite frankly have a pause at that point in time. I'm not looking at the task at hand. I'm talking about the utilization of a worker on a full-time basis that I'm concerned maybe we need to to look at or have a pause after, say, a 2-year period to see if that holds the value of full-time or perhaps given, and this doesn't matter for, quite frankly, for any department, but, you know, again, before we declare a brand-new position and have it as a permanent, I just want to make sure that we do all that needs to get done in our review of the scope of the role and making sure that the money's well spent. Thank you.
Councillor Knodel, did you have your? Okay, Councillor McGrogan?
Thank you, through the chair. So I have I guess, a question first, and I'm wondering if this full-time position, is it part of the budget that's before us now? Is it already captured in the budget, or will this be an extra on top of the 2023-24 budget? First thing.
I'm going to assume, Madam Chair, you're okay if I respond to
Yes,
that
I
question?
apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, the position is not included in the budget that was just introduced. So we were formulating this response in terms of framing out the work and the resource requirements concurrently with the budget being prepared, and we're late stages for introducing it into the package that was presented. And so it would be an additional component that we would look to add into that budget when it comes forward in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you for that. I just have to say, I think I do echo Councillor Hirsch's trepidation. And again, nothing to do with the actual position, but making it a full-time position, it's not in a budget. And, you know, we've looked at the budget, and there's obviously a number of FTEs that are being proposed there already. I think it needs to be wrapped into the bigger conversation, and I would agree that a term position at this time would make more sense. But because some of the work, as I see it, does seem to have a time limit to it. There could be some of these things that are done, the different things that are proposed. So I would strongly suggest that we consider a term position.
Councillor Robbins?
Yeah, through the chair, I come at this from probably a very different perspective, not having grown up in Medicine Hat, but rather growing up in the north, where Indigenous classmates and friends were around me every day. This is not check a few things off a list that were on the Truth and Reconciliation report so we can cover what the municipalities are supposed to be doing. That report came out in 2015. We're now in 2022. By assigning people from the City of Medicine Hat to do this work from the corner of their desks when they're busy with many other things has led us to only baby steps to this point. These, in the meetings we had in our Truth and Reconciliation Recommended Committee, one thing that really came out of it is that you have to start with the truth of what happened. We're all treaty people. Whichever side of the treaty you signed, we're all treaty people. And as we move towards understanding the truth of what that is and the reconciliation piece, that's years of work. This is not a couple of things we can do to take off of Brian's plate or Lee's plate or whatever. This is fundamentally changing the culture of this organization to understand the Indigenous perspective, Indigenous people who had a form of government long before we were sitting here. So I think that this position, while we can all agree to be financially responsible, by being financially responsible on this issue meant that not much has happened since 2015. And I think if we're going to say we care about truth and reconciliation, that we should put our money where our mouth is.
Councillor Sharps?
Thank you. Okay, so my head's kind of all over the place. I know what I want to say, so just bear with me if I stutter and stumble a little bit here. So as I read this and I read certain line items here, development of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that should be accessibility in there as an FYI, to establish clarity and direction, development, sourcing, of training grounded in DEI policy framework related to Indigenous anti-racism and intercultural awareness, recruitment, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so where I'm going with that is that there is so much to Darren and, or Councillor McGrogan and Councillor Hirsch's, sorry about that. There's a lot of FTEs coming up on the budget, and I have a lot of questions on them. However, you're also speaking to a woman of color that totally supports diversity, equity, inclusion, but not to, as a singular item. So it is about educating and looking at the big picture for an organization and our community. And like Managing Director Mastel said, the college has already done this, the school board has already done this. Maybe there's a way we could work together instead of having three different, that we work together and really come across this as a municipality, not just as one organization and another organization and another organization. And then second to that, when I read the part of this with the DEIA, and maybe we could just wait a little bit longer to say, okay, is there economy of managing these two positions into one? Because there's like 5 positions in HR that I think are coming forward. And as an HR person, we're not singular or siloed in our perspective. I mean, there's certain things that I'm absolutely horrible at and I don't go near them. But for the most part, if I can do, like training, I suck at training. Okay, so I would never apply for a training job. So fairly good at some of the other key components. And so there might be value in looking at incorporating some of this position, because I also agree with Councillor Robbins, this should never be just a, we're gonna throw some coin at this, or some, this has gotta be real. But there's, as I read this, there's room to put this together and really create something phenomenal for our city, and then maybe work with the college and the other community members that already have something here, instead of recreating the wheel all the time, and really do something exceptional. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Knodel, but I just want to remind councillors that if you would like to amend the motion, you have to put forward an amendment. Councillor Knodel.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So the question that has been asked around the table, as Councillor Robbins mentioned, I had asked, is it possible for us to create a contractual position for that person to come up with a bit of a game plan as to what is required for this position, to do a bit of the legwork? And the answer that I was given was about continuity and about consistency and about the relationships that come with the work around truth and reconciliation, because as Councillor Robbins mentioned, there's a long, painful history that we have to grapple with and make right, and that isn't a light task. So I'm wondering if we might ask for some feedback from both our partners in Medicine College, Medicine Public School Division, and our Truth and Reconciliation Commission that we have on board at the city right now, and if they might be willing to offer some of their, through the lens of an Indigenous person and an Indigenous group and an Indigenous advisor, how they see something like this getting started, and if they feel through their professional perspective or even just their anecdotal experience that we could get started with a contractual position, and that's valuable in their perspective. Perhaps that's something that might lend some insight to us. But I also think when it comes to Councillor Sharp's comment about collaboration and getting some insight, or even using their, I don't think that you meant using their employees, but simplifying our employees down to, rather than 2 people, 1 person who might do this work. I know for sure that both Medicine College and Medicine Public School Division, the employees that do that work are extremely busy. So I'm wondering if having a designated person is meaningful. I'm a little hesitant to lean on anybody else too heavily, because it is a busy job.
Can I just ask a follow-up question to Councillor Sharps? When you said 2 positions, is that you're assuming an HR position for the first 2 items?
No, I said there isn't 2 positions, but as you read The action items, you're not going to be doing DEIA without a position either. So it's going to be, in the long run, added eventually, because DEIA is pretty huge in itself. It's massive. And just walking through the organization, I can tell you we all need a lot of training, including myself. So, I think that what I'm saying is, can we just pause, take a look, really kind of see what we need? Because Darren's right. Can you imagine I said that? Can you, Darren, I know. Darren is right. Like, I mean, they want us to be accountable. They also want us to do the right thing, but they want us to be accountable while we do the right thing. And I think just a little bit more clarity as we pursue this. And I'm going to do the same thing in the budgets with every one of these positions that I see coming up. So this isn't special treatment by any means. So I just really want to make sure that when we do this position, we know what we want from it, how far in depth and breadth that we want it to go, and maybe we can actually be really super efficient with this, and like I said, create some good synergies, even maybe not, if it's not with the community, it's within our own organization.
Councillor Robbins?
I think one of the things that we talked about at committee was the difficulty in recruiting anyone into this position, if it's a contract or a part-time work. We do have relationships with Indigenous relations from other, as Managing Director Mestel has pointed out, we've relied on them heavily. We've relied on Meewasin heavily to do this work for us, basically. And it's going to be very difficult to recruit the right person into this position with that kind of connection to community that can be maintained if it's only a contract. And that was something we discussed at committee that I thought I should bring up.
Managing Director Mestel?
Thank you, Your Worship. I thought of a couple things that I didn't touch on for council this evening, but I did mention at Public Services Committee, and I think some of the questions are maybe signaling the absence of that context. So the development of a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and the training associated, those two components we've prepared in conjunction with the Human Resources Department, and they will in large part be helping to frame out that work. The specific recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Recommendations Committee is in Appendix A, and this position, as they had articulated, would be to provide leadership and advice on Indigenous matters, cultures, and protocols, support training and education efforts, promote reconciliation and relationship building, and coordinate events and activities to support awareness initiatives. We broadened it out to a community inclusion coordinator to give it some flexibility for both Indigenous-related matters as well as support on the broader diversity, equity and inclusion work in the organization, with specific attention to build upon that around Indigenous-related matters. The advisors from the positions that are at the college and Medicine School District, two fantastic individuals that were part of the Truth and Reconciliation Recommendations Committee. They sat and worked with that group and shared very helpful advice in that regard, but they are aware of the demands for their time and attention inside the roles that they are carrying inside their own institutions, although we very much appreciate their input and hope to continue to have that connection point and their insight to offer. We want to be mindful of how much we're asking from them in terms of the work that we're trying to do at the City of Medicine Hat as a broader corporation. So those connection points will be very, very important in terms of our coordination with what's happening in other institutions, and we've started that work with them, and they prepared these recommendations to outline what they felt was the appropriate staffing requirements to assist in this work. And so that came with the contributions of those advisors as part of that committee. Thanks.
Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I completely support everything that Councillor Robbins has said. And I just want to say that we need to do more than pay lip service to the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations. And the City of Medicine Hat is a leader in the community, but in this respect, we're a laggard. Everyone else, every other major institution in this city has done the work on their own. They've hired the people, they've researched, and they're taking the steps to make it right. And we need to do that. And we need to recognize that sometimes there is a cost to doing the right thing, and we just have to do it. And so I would fully support all the recommendations in this motion.
Councillor Dumanowski.
Your Worship, I'm going to speak to this. I appreciate the breadth and depth of conversation that's happening around this, and it is prudent that we have those kinds of conversations. For whatever reason, the Indigenous support worker with Medicine Hat Catholic has been lost on part of the conversation because there have been references to the college in 76. We too have one. And to the point that was made earlier, working very much full-time, there's plenty of work in the school setting. Just bear with me. I mean, it's tied to our curriculum. I know in health services, they have lots of training tied to that mandate that I can't officially speak to, but I know some of that works in that world. And certainly as a city, we have to play catch up. We really do. I don't think it's an inappropriate question to ask around what their roles and responsibilities or tasks or otherwise might be to kind of gain a better and wholesome understanding of what the roles and responsibility of that person would be. But I'm thinking when I look at the wording here around support training, programming, consultation, relationship building, providing advice, guidance on culture matters, I see a significant mandate. And the fact of the matter is, if I may, it's not one and done. No different than in the districts or at the college. You have an ongoing community of students, both adults or young in the school divisions, and you have a community that is constantly evolving and changing, and we're bringing that education and those connections in an ongoing way. And so I don't see there might be some initial preliminary tasks that they may encounter, but I see this as an ongoing role, very much rooted in our history and our future. I'm very comfortable in supporting all the recommendations.
Councillor Hirsch.
Well, Your Worship, I'm not sure that it seems that there's a point that I'm trying to make is that I'm at a yes. I'm actually supporting this, but I guess I'm just trying to look at it from a point of view and what maybe this current council or others alike don't realize is that we actually have a current community inclusion coordinator. And so, you know, all I need to do, and quite frankly, is that's my role as a counselor, is to understand, and all I've been asking for, quite frankly, is a bit of scope of work. I hearken back to the original community inclusion coordinator that we got, and that's exactly what we got. We got a scope, terms of reference of what the role was, etc. So I'm not asking, I don't think, for anything outside of what's already been done in the past. I am prepared, again, I am at a yes to having it. I just need to understand before we have, again, a permanent position that we look at doing. I'm not saying that this is a one and done. All I'm saying is before we get to that road, I want to have a firm understanding that this is the body of the work that absolutely is warranted for permanency. And the points were already made. We have a growing community of economies of scale going on here. There is a multitude of people, and I'll actually speak to the last comment. This position will provide opportunity to promote truth and reconciliation and increase efforts to promote Medicine Hat as a welcoming and inclusive community. But yet we're onboarding people in a siloed basis. And I need to understand, when we talk about a community conversation and a community response, I really do feel that having the path, or at least having a community conversation with other people within our community and other people that deliver that sort of service. And again, we are talking about, sometimes the conversation's going about the merits of Truth and Reconciliation. I'm not debating that. I'm debating the warranting of a role within the city of Medicine Hat. It's gonna come at other events. We're talking about other people that are coming on potential positions. That's where I'm coming from. This has nothing to do with the matter at hand. I'm just saying, before we make decisions, let's just do them in a prudent manner, within a good scope. This is what the role is going to entail. That's it. And I'm comfortable either going down a path in terms of working at our community partners or looking in that this is a term position for certainly to get revisited again. And I hope I get overwhelmed with a body of evidence that says this needs to be permanent. I really do. Thank you.
I will come to you, City Manager Feltham. So I'm not hearing anyone around the table saying that they are against the spirit of the recommendations or the need for resources to empower the city to do what's right with respect to truth and reconciliation. I think it's just about the concerns are about the detail and the scope, how the job fits into the broader context of the city, the HR responsibilities, for example. Is there going to be a budget amendment coming forward with respect to the position, Managing Director Mastel?
Yes, Your Worship, be looking to make a motion or asking a councillor to present council a motion to amend the budget on November 16th. Or 21st, sorry.
And at that time, would the budget amendment come complete with a job description or scope?
We will work to try and get further scope that I'll work on trying to address council's questions between now and then as it relates to that. There will not be a job description on that day, but maybe in terms of the scope and the absence of the clarity that's required, I'll work on trying to bridge that between now and then. City
Manager Feltham?
Actually, I think my points were made quite well by others, so I'm fine. Thank you, Mayor Clark.
Councillor Knodel?
Wrong order of things. Might it be helpful to make a motion to direct staff to come back within the next meeting or two with further detail? And could we tentatively approve the recommendations with some sort of caveat that we need to see the scope and sequence of the position in order to fully approve, but we will approve this recommendation today and look for that documentation to come forward in order to make a full acceptance of the recommendation?
We could do that. I think if we have the opportunity to review the position at the budget amendment stage, we could have that information delivered to us at that stage, which will be in the next couple of days. So we would be approving in theory, the creation of the position, but the scope and integration with the remainder of the city and our community partners would be detailed out at the time of the budget amendment. So I don't know if that suits your needs or.
My main concern is that we have been slow with this particular topic and that it doesn't get lost and it doesn't get put on the back burner. So as long as it stays at the top of our priority list, I'm happy with moving forward with that.
Councillor Sharps?
You know, I want to say that I agree. We have been slow, and I was the first to complain about that when we all got elected, about really being behind on this. But being behind on something, I don't think is the right reason to start rushing forward now. It still needs to be methodical. It still needs to be properly done. And I completely agree with Councillor Van Dyke that we're behind. But again, behind doesn't mean that you just go full torque ahead without understanding. And it does worry me that we're proposing recruitment when we don't even know what the job is. I mean, if that was my client, I would advise against recruitment when you don't know a job. So I think that we can absolutely move this forward and maybe just an adjustment on point 5 to work with community partners to support training, consultation, and relationship. And then we can make any further amendments after the budget changes. Just a thought.
Are you making a motion?
Sure. Okay, so I'm making a motion to, like, can I just tell you what the changes are? Okay, to work with community partners, so point 5, to work with community partners to support training, consultation, and relationship building, as well as advice in cultural matters and how the city can promote truth and reconciliation and increase efforts to promote Medicine Hat as a welcoming and inclusive community.
So you're eliminating the community inclusion coordinator as a,
Sorry, at this point only, I mean, pending a job description and a budget, maybe it's like, wow, because we do have a community inclusion coordinator, so I'm scared about repeating 2 positions, and the first thing the community is gonna say to us after all these budgets is like, why do you need 2? There's 60,000 people. And 85% of you are white Caucasian. Why do you need 2? And it's a good question. So I want to make sure we have the answers, is just my point.
Councillor McGrogan, we wouldn't need a seconder on that motion. Councillor McGrogan, go ahead with your question.
Well, I really had more of a comment than a question. And-
Second, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It's a motion to amend.
Through the chair, I just would like to clarify what motion is currently being voted on. So what I heard was that council wants to amend bullet number 5 of the main motion.
We've had a motion to amend bullet number 5. We haven't voted on it yet.
Correct. So I'm just clarifying what the content of the motion is. So it's to, for council to amend bullet number 5 to strike recruitment and onboarding.
Okay, so yours is worded better. Yes, that would
So
be
we're going to
correct.
strike recruitment and onboarding and insert,
Recruitment and onboarding of community inclusion coordinator is struck. Yeah, that's what she said.
and we're not including anything else. We just want to support.
Work with our community partners to support training. So recruitment and onboarding of community inclusion coordinator would be deleted and replaced with work with our community partners. Is that correct, Councillor Sharp?
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Sorry, I think just even to support, even if we took out, removed, sorry, I'm stuttering, removed onboarding of a community inclusion coordinator, just those words, and just saying, in rather support training, programming, consultation, and relationships. Or however grammatically correct way you would like to say it.
What's the action item there, though? Because there's no action item if we just remove the very first
To
part of it.
support training,
Yeah, because what are they doing?
to support, they're supporting training, consultation, relationship building, as well as providing advice.
How?
So if you, okay, so to work with community partners was the first line item. So we already have a community inclusion coordinator?
Okay, so we're gonna open it up to debate on the amending motion. I would like to reiterate that we will have an opportunity during a budget amendment process to review the position in more detail, and Managing Director Mastel has committed to providing us further detail at that time. Councillor Van Dyke?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I just wanted to make one comment regarding this concern about having 2 inclusion coordinators in the community. So just if people are not aware, like 1 in 5 Canadians have a disability, and Indigenous populations in Canada are growing at twice the rate as the rest of Canadian populations. So when we're talking about 1 or 2 positions out of 12 to 1,400 staff, how are they supposed to represent such a large demographic of our community? So I'm not sure that that should be as big of a concern as it's being made out to be. Thank you.
Councillor Canoto?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I'm wondering if we could, just to piggyback off Councillor Sharp's and where the direction that she was headed, if we could make this 5th point to seek advice and support from community partners to guide a job description so that that information can come forward and I understand there's a time limitation to the kind of work that's required in order to make a job description and other particular details, but if we could use that bullet point rather than recruit, seek guidance and support in developing the job description for a community inclusion coordinator, ... So then that we have an action item around exactly what Councillor Sharps was saying, but now we have the full frame.
I'm not sure that's what Councillor Sharps was saying. Would you consider that a friendly amendment, Councillor Sharps?
Okay, so I'm going to just read it again, and let's see if it does align. Maybe I'm not hearing it properly. So what I'm suggesting is to work with community partners to support training, consultation, and relationship building, as well as advice in cultural matters and how the city can promote TRC and increase efforts to promote Medicine Hat as a welcoming and inclusive community. The action item is to work with the existing community partners.
Meaning that the recruitment and onboarding of a community inclusion officer would not be included in that piece that under the amended motion or the motion to amend.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Of course.
So that all of these particular bullets require somebody to do the work. If we don't have a designated human to do the work, then who's doing the work?
Yes, you want me to? Okay, I
Yes, you
just feel
can,
like
and then
this is
I need
starting-
to go to Councillor Dumanowski.
Okay, so that, yeah, I don't mean to debate this, but if you read the entire thing, it's also development of DEI policy and framework to establish. So that's what I'm trying to say is there's these notes within here are going to be people. So before we hire one person here and not the other 3 and then come back in 6 months and say, oh, we need more, let's just figure out what we need is all I'm saying is I fully support this. What I fully support is doing it right and making sure we have a work, we have the scope, we have clear role definition between the HR diversity potential position and this position, because they're not exclusive of each other. They are very much similar in terms, diversity is the same. Like we still have to work together. So we don't want one individual or one person working on DEI and A and then one person just working on Indigenous, because it's about inclusion, so it's all of us. So let's just see what that looks like is all I'm saying. I'm not opposed to this. I'm opposed to rushing to say that we're finally doing it. That doesn't sit well with me either.
Councillor Dumanowski?
I'll start off by saying I'm a little bit surprised at the debate we're having on this, and not because I don't think anyone's points are well-intentioned, and I want to emphasize I believe everyone's points are well-intentioned. I don't see them being contradictory. I see them more of a timing aspect, and so for me, when I kind of look at this in a broad sense, I see recommendations flowing out of a community vibrancy advisory committee that created an ad hoc. And out of that hard work and labor, a number of recommendations that are identified here were brought forward for direction or moving forward on. And when I read them as matter-of-fact statements. I don't necessarily look at them immediately as, one job FTE, 2 jobs FTE. I see them as statements that are being moved forward that to some extent will require additional resources. How we get there yet to be determined. We heard from our managing director that this would have to come through at a budgetary point, and we would have to vote on it. We're saying, as a council, I think there's enough people saying we want more detail, we want to understand it better. whether working with the other partners in the school district or school districts or the college, is material or immaterial to the fact that we're accepting a point that has been brought forward from that ad hoc committee. For me, accepting all of these wholesale makes sense today, and then we determine the other pieces at a future point. So I think the fear might be, and I could be wrong, that if we do accept this as intention today, we are giving license immediately to have another hire, and yet we heard very clearly that that would come forward. And if the fact that there is more information required by council to understand that position better will make or break the funding of that position at a future point, then that's going to be incumbent upon our managing director and others to identify some of that so that we can, or whomever can be satisfied that that position is to be funded out of the, as an additional budget item. So for me, I think it makes sense to adopt all of these today, and certainly I would recommend council do that.
Councillor Robbins?
I guess I just take an issue with that there's some sort of rush going on here. I've been sitting at this table for a year. The Truth and Reconciliation Advisory Committee was established. We went through the terms of reference. That was back last December, I think. We went through and there was an appointed to people on the committee. That committee asked for a counselor. I asked if Managing Director Mestel could ask them who they would like. They asked for me. I sat with them for a year in many, many hours, painstakingly going through the Truth and Reconciliation report and the recommendations. So there's no rush here to try to rubber stamp something. What I hear from Managing Director, I'm not going to support the amendment because what I hear from Managing Director Mestel is that he's aware of what council's issues are. He knows what your questions are. I have the same questions. I want to know what this person's going to be doing and the details. If his answers aren't satisfactory, we don't approve the budget amendment. But that's where the detail is going to come. I think he's heard everything we've had to say about it. But I think, I mean, obviously I'm not going to support the amendment. I am going to support my original motion because I hear Managing Director Mestel say that all of the questions we have will be answered, and we have another chance if we're not satisfied to send it back and say we need more information or we don't like this.
Thank you. So seeing no further speakers, I just want to clarify the motion, the amending motion on the table before we vote on it. Bullet number 5 would be amended to say, work with community partners to support training, programming, consultation, and relationship building, as well as provide advice and guidance on cultural matters, and provide opportunity to promote truth and reconciliation and increase efforts to promote Medicine Hat as a welcoming and inclusive community. So seeing no further questions or comments, we'll vote just on the amending motion. Okay, the noes have it. So now we're back to the motion made by, the original motion made by Councillor Robbins, which is to approve the Truth and Reconciliation actions for the 2023 as listed in the agenda. Councillor Hirsch.
Thanks, Your Worship. And again, I guard my comments relative to just the position, not the tasks at hand. And it's important to delineate that because we do have a current community inclusion coordinator that was situated when we talked about physical impairments on our community and mental. Quite frankly, cutouts within the wheelchair accessible corners in intersections, certainly was something that wasn't done in the past and now is part of our standard operating, which I appreciate. One of the things, if I am to support this, and I am willing to be swayed to come over onto this, but I need to understand, we've got an existing community inclusion coordinator. We already talked about, to your Councillor Sharp's point about diversity, equity, inclusion. So we've got portfolios that I just want to know, how do they form? We've got existing community inclusion coordinators. How does that form? How does that web into the activities of now a department, quite frankly, of 2 people, sorry, that have portfolios, and I get it. I just need to understand, because I think we're being detrimental to the other affected individuals within this area if we don't have that discussion of how that interacts in terms of the services that are provided by these individuals to the community Medicine Hat. And that's quite frankly all I'm asking for, is just a little understanding of what the synergies are. Thank you.
Councillor McGrogan?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I didn't like the amendment because I didn't think it covered the possibility of onboarding somebody in an appropriate way. So that's why I didn't support it. We all have very strong feelings about this topic. Hopefully we all do. I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but my view is they should take the ribbons down at the grave sites and put crime scene tape around it, and they should investigate it. But we can only control what we can control as a municipality. So then we ask ourselves, what is that? That is being responsible to our taxpayer, first doing the right thing around this whole issue. And I just am hesitant with the budget coming up to kind of pull this out separately. It should be all part of here's the budget, here's this piece that's really important. There is a number of other FTEs that are going to be discussed and brought forward. Where does this fit into the big package? But again, I agree, all these bullets are extremely important and valuable. I just think we're jumping the gun a bit, and I'd just like to see how it fits in the big picture, to see what our taxpayers are paying for it, how the inclusion piece aligns with this particular role. So that's my view on that, and I'm hesitant to support this just because of that bullet and how it's worded, and I would really like to be able to make the decision when we see the whole budget put together and how this position fits. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to follow up. What do you propose?
Well, I don't want to say no to most of this, but I don't want to just allow the hiring of an FTE, although it may make sense. I guess it's like Councillor Hirsch said, what are the details and and Councillor Sharp, what are the roles going to be? So we've already tried to amend it once. I just think it's not clear the way it's laid out here. To me, it's permission to go ahead and hire that position, and then we might decide that, when it comes time to give the money for it, to not give the money. I think that's, I wouldn't say underhanded, but it's not, I don't think, the appropriate way. So to me, it's amending 5 to kind of put off the onboarding of this person until we've seen the whole budget and we can put it all together. So
Could you add the word explore out front?
I'm leaning towards maybe postponing. Councillor Robbins?
Thank you, through the chair. I just want to do my best to sway my friend Councillor Hirsch, because he said he was amenable to be swayed. So I can advise you, having sat on the committee, that our current community inclusion coordinator was on the Truth and Reconciliation Committee and participated in that process. I can also advise that Director Presteko from Community Development was on the committee as well, and Managing Director Mastel also attended. So there has been city administration pieces, including the other inclusion coordinator, to understand what the wholesome discussion was from the Truth and Reconciliation group. So if that, I'm not sure that's going to sway you or not, but that is perhaps a piece of information you may find of some interest in your deliberations. I'm not sure if I got any of the, Managing Director Mastel, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about any of that, but the the fact that the city was, city administration and the current inclusion coordinator were at the table was critical to the success of the discussions. I would just also add that we talked about consulting other people doing similar work in the community. They were also in that group. So that consultation extensively has taken place. I understand what everyone is saying, that we want more detail again. And I also, sorry, Managing Director Mastel also said that this came up too late to include in the budget information we already have, but we will be getting more information about it.
Councillor Canodal?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I feel that if we allow the values-based decision-making to go to the side and prioritize our financial decision-making, then we, again, are reinforcing the problem at hand, which is, you know, sometimes you have to prioritize the value over the financial piece. And I understand they're equally important, but I just think that there's something to be said about moving forward with this and then figuring out as we go. I think we will. We're not going to not be responsible financially. That's our job. But if we prioritize the values-based decision-making here, I think that we'll do the right thing.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that no one is saying to prioritize financial over a position. It's more so the details of what the position is and how we're integrating it into the overall cohort of individuals that are going to be involved in diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. I feel comfortable voting in favor of this motion because I don't see it as, you know, when we do the budget process, yoinking it away. It would be more an opportunity to further explore how that integration occurs, and even to a certain extent, whether it's a term position, contract position, whatever else, because it just says, it's not specific with respect to whether it's permanent, full-time. It just says the recruitment and onboarding of an inclusion coordinator, yada, yada, yada. So I am comfortable supporting it, but again, with the caveat that we will get more detailed information about how this integrates with our broader strategies. With that said, would anyone want to make an amendment, or would you view it as a friendly amendment to add accessibility, replace diversity, equity, and inclusion with diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility?
I'm fine with that amendment.
Okay, we will vote on the motion as amended. Yeah, so it was a friendly amendment, and seeing no objections, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we're just voting on, it was a friendly amendment, so it's allowed not to be voted on, and so that's now included in the motion as amended. Okay. Okay, we'll vote. And that passes 6-3. Moving on to item 9.3.3, Monarch Theatre.
So reluctant to make another motion today, but I'll give it another go. I move that council direct management to prepare and issue a request for proposal and to evaluate submissions based on the criteria listed in the agenda.
Seconder?
Sorry.
Second. Are there any questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Moving on to, Councillor Robbins, as Chair of Public Services, do you have any meeting highlights that you would like to share?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I think I've made all the highlights I could. Already, thank you.
All right, moving on to item 10, reports for reception. Item 10.1, Police Commission minutes of September 26, 2022.
I'll motion to.
I apologize. I am really sorry. Apparently, we do not have to make a motion because we are just receiving it for information. But Councillor Van Dyke or Councillor Sharps, do you have any highlights from the meeting that you would like to share at this time? No, seeing none. We will move on to new business. These are items for, the first item is bylaw 4721, offsite levy bylaw amendment, and the sponsor is strategic management and analysis.
Sorry, if I may, do you want me to make the motion for the bylaw, or did you want to hear from the managing director first?
Well, this is just first reading, so we can, I think we'll have a presentation. Managing Director Pancoast is nodding at me at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4721, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the offsite levy bylaw.
Second.
We will vote. And that's unanimous. There will be a public hearing on this matter on November 21st, 2022. I don't really. Apparently, it was bylaw 4717 that we did not give first reading to. So
would you like me to do that now then?
I would like you to do that now. Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to confirm 4717?
That is right, yes.
Okay. I'd like to move that council give first reading to bylaw 4717, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend the water service bylaw.
Second.
Okay, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Now on to 10.2, proposed road closure, Spencer Street. The sponsor is Strategic Management and Analysis, and we can give all three readings to this bylaw with unanimous consent.
I'd like to make a motion, sorry.
If you'd like, do you want me to do it?
Yeah, sure, sorry,
Okay.
I have too many papers.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 4720, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to revise bylaw 4695.
Second.
We'll vote. That's unanimous.
I'd like to make a motion that council give second reading to bylaw 4720.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote on second reading. And that's unanimous.
I'd like to make a motion that council unanimously consent to having third reading of bylaw 4720 at this meeting.
Second.
We will vote. And that's unanimous.
I'd like to motion that council give third and final reading to bylaw 4720, being a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to revise bylaw 4695.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. That's unanimous. Moving on to item 11, communications. The first item is 11.1, Shortgrass Library population figure update and budget request, 2023 and 2024. Councillor Van Dyke, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. This is the population figures that are used to determine the funding for that the City of Medicine Hat contributes to the Shortgrass Regional Library System. We are one of 11 municipalities that support the Shortgrass system, and so this is a standard budget request that has come forward. Would you like me to go ahead with making the motion? Okay, thank you. I'd like to motion that council refer the Shortgrass Library population figure update and budget request for 2023 and 2024 to the Council Committee of the Whole for consideration during budget deliberations.
Second. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. Our final item is 11.2, and it's a letter from the City of Lethbridge requesting advocacy related to fine revenue. Councillor Sharps, would you like to speak to this one?
Well, I have a motion here that council authorize the mayor to write a letter to Honorable Tyler Chandro, Minister of Justice, Solicitor General, in support of the request from the City of Lethbridge to advocate for Alberta to return all funds generated from fine revenues directly to the police services that generated the fine revenues, so that these funds may be applied to offset the burden of tax-supported policing.
Sorry, I'll second.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments? Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. Through the chair, a couple of things. I read the letter, and it seems to be a letter that's addressed to us, but they refer to Calgary kind of strangely through the whole thing. So it says here, we don't return our revenue directly to the police services. We know that. So would our letter say something more like that it be returned to the city? So do we need some kind of a friendly amendment for this to word it that way, or are we good with how it's worded? Because I think it's misleading to the community that, you know, that we're getting. We went through this, the city went through this recently where, you know, the perception was that fine revenue is coming back to the police service to do whatever it chose with it, which was never the case, but now the fine revenue goes back to the city, not to the police service directly. So should we entertain just a friendly amendment to change that we advocate that they return all funds generated from fine revenues directly to the City of Medicine Hat? Oh. Well, option 2 says that council refer this item to the appropriate standing committee for further discussion.
I'm happy with the
I
friendly
don't know if we
amendment.
need to discuss it much further. I think it's pretty straightforward. We support the idea that, you know, that we want to claw back the money that they clawed from us. I just think if we make a friendly amendment, I would be in support of option 1.
Andy, can I, just a quick question. So where it says to return all funds generated from fine revenues directly to the police service that generated the fine revenue, instead of going back to the police, you just want that to say the city?
To the City of Medicine Hat, or the city that generated the
Just
fine
not to the
revenues.
police department?
Yeah, because a lot of, I think, municipalities, the money doesn't go back into the police budget. It goes back to the general revenues of the city.
I'm not opposed.
Okay, so I'm not sure where this wording came from. But in my view, I think we need potentially administration to look into what the proper wording for our municipality would be. So would you are you okay with option 2?
Absolutely. This was given to me as a request to read, so let's be honest, I didn't write this. So it came from that side of the table.
More in the middle? Okay, Councillor Robbins.
Yeah, so my concern about the motion is just that when I review the letter, I see a lot of things that weren't really reflective of the City of Medicine Hat, what we need, how we get information, and they even talk about, you know, being understaffed in the Lethbridge Police Service. So we have very different issues, and we may ultimately, with proper information, align with what they have to say, but I don't feel like I have enough information to say I want to just follow what Lethbridge has done in this situation, because, I mean, Councillor McGrogan's already pointed out one thing, I've pointed out a second thing. I think we should maybe refer this to the appropriate standing committee instead, and then get that recommendation. Is this something that we should support or not?
Councillor Sharps, would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Seeing no further questions or comments, we will vote on the motion as amended. It's unanimous, and seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.